and welcome to the 116th edition of Marex Maritime News. The headlines on Monday, 2nd of May 2022. Container shipping prices fall in India. Russian Black Sea oil exports double. Who is buying? Port bottlenecks show signs of easing. Can India boost wheat exports? Inmarsat program to combat rising maritime cybercrime. A recent analysis on the Indian container logistics market showed that there has been a general decline in average prices of 20 feet DC and 40 feet HT standard shipping containers across the ports of Chennai, Nhava Sheva and Mundra from mid-January 2022 till date, after having peaked in the months of August-September 2021.
Firstly, the shipping lines repositioned 1.85 million TEUs of empty containers into the country in 2021 at a huge cost to help Indian exports. This exercise continues in 2022 as well. Secondly, new services were introduced which added to the weekly capacity from Indian ports by about 33 to 35,000 TEUs. If annualized, this works out to about an additional capacity of 1.80 million TEUs. Both these steps contributed towards an increase in India's export volumes by 18% over the previous year and helped the country exceed its export target of $400 billion in 2021-2022. Besides, the current COVID protocols and congestion at Chinese ports has opened up some additional space for Indian exports to the US West Coast and the West Coast of South America. Finally, the post-31st March effect every year results in some slowdown in the export volumes and increase in space after the end of the financial year. The trade is thus relatively better placed currently than it was some time ago.
It is no doubt that prices of container equipment, particularly the less used ones like the ubiquitous 20-foot dry van container and the massively popular 40-feet high cube box. The 40-feet high cube was immensely popular as in most cases there was no freight difference between a 40-foot GP box and a 40-foot high cube. Further, most of the container ships built during the last 2 decades have designs that include 40 high cube stowage without affecting restrictions. So most makers of containers have shifted to manufacturing 40 high cubes only. The typical 20-foot GP container now moves in limited and let's call it intra-trades only. With Mundra, Nhava Sheva and Chennai being the major container gateway ports, it is obvious that the signs of container availability and costs of owning such containers will manifest itself early in these ports. With all container ship owners continuing to fire on all cylinders, the requirement to fill ships on liner services remains paramount. There was no need for liners to go and buy containers. They could just be leased from any of the companies, any of the leasing companies, only when required. Then why did the focus for buying containers shifted from MLOs? It shifted mainly to the huge number of non-vessel operating common carriers and some freight forwarders who wanted to try and enter this segment by shifting their role. However, with so many containers entering the market, the demand for liner services increased. And with the increase, a large number of ship owners having multi-purpose ships came out of the regular domain of big bulk, heavy lift, bulk shipping and moved into container liner services. What happened then? The last few months saw the COVID-19 rear its head again in China, causing major disruptions in the global supply chains and again reducing the demand for containers as well as for any new liner services. The prices of 40-foot high cubes that was raining at 5,200 in the beginning of this year has dropped to 4,200. This is a substantial drop for a new box. If we look at the 20-foot GP, the market shifts from $1,600 US to only to about $2,300. We should not forget that for any new liner services. The prices of 40-foot high cubes that was raining at 5,200 in the beginning of this year has dropped to 4,200. This is a substantial drop for a new box. If we look at the 20-foot GP, the market shifts from 1,600 US dollars to about $2,300. We should not forget that purchase of dry units is being mainly done by NVOCCs, small liner operators and leasing companies, while the bigger shipping companies, particularly the nylon ones, are pushing into reefer container markets, which brings in greater revenue. The smaller players and NVOCCs are keeping clear of this reefer market, mainly due to high risk and greater potential claims. On the whole, the prices of containers are greatly affected by many inputs, including second-hand prices, but all these fluctuations in container markets are a temporary phenomenon for this year as times settle.
Despite sanctions, the volume of crude leaving the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk has more than doubled. The questions arises, who is buying it?
War is always painful for those who are involved in it and are bearing the brunt through loss of life, property and livelihood. Before I start talking about the Russian oil exports from Black Sea and elsewhere with origination from Russia, I pray that good sense prevails and this war comes to an end before escalating further and thereby affecting millions more. Energy is necessary for manufacturing, services, and is the lifeline to sustain world's economy. Under the present circumstances, while the sanctions are directed towards strangling the Russian revenue streams and hence its economy, we have to understand that Russian energy is not easily replaceable and is a key source in the global energy markets. Russia supplies about half of Europe's diesel, and any stop in the supply of Russian barrels will increase the diesel and other fuel shortages, not only in Europe but around the world. It is easy for US, being a net exporter of energy, to manage its energy requirements. However, for India, Europe, China and many other countries, it is a matter of survival with limited reserves in the face of expensive alternate sources, of course, if there are any. Hence, we are seeing countries importing oil and gas from Russia, and it is indeed not easy to do so. There are a few critical effects of sanctions, such as finding ships willing to pick up cargoes of Russian crude, finding banks to provide letters of credit, and, of course, the contractual commitments. Some examples of contractual commitments being that of Shell, Total and few others who have long-term contracts to lift Russian oil. Russia exports crude from four main areas: the Baltic Sea in the northwest Europe, the Black Sea, the Arctic, and the terminals on its Pacific coast. The aggregate volumes from all four regions have recently jumped up. Flows of Urals and Siberian light crude from terminals in the Baltic and Black Sea rose by almost 36%. The volume of crude leaving the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk more than doubled as the backlog of ships that built up during the second week of April's bad weather started to clear. Now coming to who is buying. While some of the ships have identified destinations, 1/5 of the volume shipped from the ports on the Black Sea, Baltic and Arctic coast is on tankers showing no final destination. Mostly 2 order bills of lading have been issued. And all these ships, most of these ships, they ultimately end up in Asia. The charts on the slide are from Bloomberg and show the destinations of crude cargoes from each of the 4 export regions of Russia. Destinations are based on where the vessels signal they are heading at the time of export from Bloomberg and will almost certainly change as the voyage progresses. Most are either signaling for orders or Gibraltar. It is very likely that many of these ships will end up either in Asia or they will transfer their cargoes to larger ships, which will continue their journey eastward. However, the number of tankers leaving the Baltic for destinations in Asia continued to fall, with just one vessel signaling a destination in India. Anyone who is buying or carrying the Russian oil needs to be extremely careful, keeping in mind the loss or lack of marine insurance, that is the cover, and thus having financial and legal exposure to huge losses and potential liabilities.
Port bottlenecks that have increased supply chain congestion because of the war in Ukraine and lockdowns in China may be showing signs of easing. Currently, the number of ships waiting outside Los Angeles and Long Beach have been reduced to less than 40 from more than 100 earlier this year. And the waiting time for ships at Shanghai ports is 2 or 3 days, compared with 10 to 14 days at the US ports. Russia's military offensive in Ukraine severely hampers wheat exports from both countries, which collectively account for more than a quarter of global supplies of the commodity. India has the ambition and the capacity to fill at least part of the global wheat supplies gap. The current supply gap presents an enormous opportunity to India to explore its agricultural potential and boost wheat exports. However, fears remain that the quality of shipments and logistics could hold back the third largest Asian economy from achieving its full market potential. Inmarsat, the world leader in global mobile satellite communications, has launched Fleet Secure Unified Threat Management (UTM) to protect vessel networks against cyber attacks. Depending on user preferences, Fleet Secure UTM capabilities can include gateway antivirus software, intrusion detection and prevention, web content filtering, and application control. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you for watching. See you next Monday.